Before we move on, Ben, you mentioned Power of the Daleks. Say the line.
I'm married to Power of the Daleks.
Lovely. Round two. Round two.
I need to look up what this question is.
Me too.
Best start.
Question two. Which horror franchise would make the best crossover with Doctor Who? Now, this is very much based on a question which we did in our first episode, and let's face it, who doesn't love a crossover? And we've got some great we've got some terrible horror crossovers, actually, in terms of movies. I was about to say good, and then I was like, oh, wait, Alien versus Predator, I can't say that's good. Freddy versus Jason, I can't say that's good either. So, we've got some pretty terrible ones, let's face it, in the world of movies. But what horror franchise would make the best crossover with Doctor Who? And this time I'm going to go to you, Will, a man who knows horror very well.
Cool. Thank you very much. So when I first looked at this question, I did what many horror fans do, and I thought, okay, let's look at all the fun franchises that I love. Okay, so Doctor Who meets Hellraiser, Doctor Who meets Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street and The Babadook or something. But then I thought, okay, let's actually be a little bit more realistic and pragmatic about this. There's no way that Freddy Krueger is going to be appearing in a completely unbutchered form in a Doctor Who story, whether it be expanded media or the TV show proper. We've got to go for something a little bit more family friendly, but also something that's just as malleable to format, to genre, to tone and structure as Doctor Who is as well, because that's a show where you can go anywhere and do anything. So I gravitated to Goosebumps. Now, this could be the TV series or the recent film runs, which I actually think are really good, like quite underrated. One of the few good things that Sony has put out recently in the past few years. TV series, the movies, the books as well from R.L. Stine. And I think that there's a reason that there's like 60 to 70 of these original books from the 1990s that have stood the test of time and have been revisited so often. I think apart from Harry Potter, it's like the best-selling book franchise of all time. It has staying power. It has, it is an incredibly popular one, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it will be good. But I think because these stories are able to really resonate in a way like Doctor Who has, because it's got these really fun creatures at the heart of it. Slappy the dummy, who is the ventriloquist dummy, and things that Doctor Who has done before but in a different form, like the Yeti, abominable snowmen. You've got the giant praying mantis, you've got werewolves. These are just some of the ones that were done in the 2015 film starring Jack Black. Once again, I think it's actually a really good film. And that film also did something where the books came to life, which meant it could do the best of it, could do the anthology. It is kind of like a more modern Twilight Zone, and I love the Twilight Zone. I reference it so many times in my upcoming December Hartnell Marathon, because that was just such a good comparison for the 60s. But yeah, I think that Goosebumps is something that is able to genre hop and be just as malleable as Doctor Who, while still retaining a family-friendly core, keeping kids under or behind the sofa without having numerous Ofcom complaints.
Brilliant. Absolutely scared the shit out of me as a child watching it on CBBC. I did the fact check as well. It is definitely one of the best-selling book series of all time, so no one can bring that up as far against you, Will. Well done. Sam, over to you.
For this one, I'm bringing the Alien franchise to cross over with Doctor Who. Now, the Xenomorph is no stranger to Doctor Who. It's appeared in the classic series, a facehugger even, and it almost finds every excuse to work its way into the expanded media. There is just a little mini bro cannon. Jack Harkness has run past a Xenomorph wearing a tuxedo suit. So I don't know if that gets me more points, or I don't know how your metric works, but that'd be cool. What really strikes me about the Alien series is it showed so early on that it's got variety and it will genre hop at will. So it's equally as malleable, but at the same time, it's clearly runs parallel with Doctor Who, and it always has. The era I would go most strongly with, because, Alien 1 is my favorite. It doesn't really work with Doctor Who. That's why we're not touching Alien 1. Aliens is where the franchise gets franchise properties. If you would cross over with Aliens, you would do it in this version of the franchise with a final girl who acts almost already like a Doctor Who companion. Space Marines, we've got these desolate dark surroundings that Doctor Who was doing itself in the 80s. I think specifically Eric Saywood would be the man for this project. I think he would absolutely adore throwing a xenomorph and all the dark capitalistic roots of the alien universe and put them on Peter Davison's shoulders. There's a great internet video by Chris Walker Thompson, which is Doctor Who meets Alien Isolation. It is the visuals, the cold, scary visuals of Alien Isolation, but with the Capaldi voice. And it's a dead ringer. It fits so perfectly. You might think, isn't the Xenomorph a bit too intense for kids? Well, that's why we've got plenty of expanded media. They've become a movie monster, very much from their early roots. And when you've got something that's an iconic movie monster with that fantastic design, you've entered Doctor Who's territory, which is just as open-ended as the Alien franchise. Over to you, Ben.
So, my pick is Morbius.
Fuck off. Can I get mean yet? Can I get really mean now?
I think the fight has already started.
Not yet. No, Ben,
Okay.
go on. Let's be
It's not
fair.
Morbin time yet. It's not.
Oh, he's
not
fucking
Morbin.
It's not Morbius. Okay. So I did clear this with Jack, and I have been told that apparently video game horror franchises are allowed. If it turns out not, if this is going to turn into another boxer's clause situation, I'm putting myself up front.
The question, and I'll let you finish. I'll let you finish. The question is, which horror franchise? There is no specification whether it needs to be TV or film or video games. So you got a loophole. Well done.
Right.
London
So,
Dungeons.
I'm
Sorry.
going with Silent Hill. Now, I think with most other horror franchises, which, for the record, I think you chaps have mostly avoided. You've gone for things that seem quite malleable. Most franchises, it would just be the Doctor versus a monster, and it would just turn into a who would win in a fight thing, and it's always going to be the Doctor. So the Doctor versus Freddy versus Jason versus Alien versus Predator. There's not really much of a story there. Whereas Silent Hill, well, it does have its iconic monsters. It has Pyramid Head. It's not just him. Silent Hill is a setting for the Doctor to land in and explore. And more to that, it's actually as matched to Doctor Who in how flexible its concept is, because Silent Hill 4 doesn't even take place in Silent Hill. It explores a completely original concept. So there's a lot of creative freedom and a lot of potential for both franchises. And you might be thinking, well, if the concept is that flexible, why do we need the name Silent Hill at all? Can the Doctor just tell original concept for a horror? Well, I think to paraphrase Yahtzee Croshaw, the essence of Silent Hill is grim, cold, oppressive atmosphere of entrapment, like being locked in a campsite lavatory late at night. And what makes it unique to Doctor Who is it makes it a unique foil to the Doctor, because the Doctor is defined by the power to escape from any story. The person who keeps running because they dare not look back. So a setting that's all a kind of story that's all about entrapment and not being able to leave. It's a unique foil for this character. And I think it would benefit both franchises. One of the main issues with Silent Hill is it's always going to try and pull some kind of twist with the protagonist, or reveal some kind of dark past. That's not really going to be the issue with the Doctor, because, well, we already kind of know everything about the character by this point, but we're still attached to them. You don't need to kind of throw a twist onto them. Survival horror, I am pitching a game, to be specific, for this. The Doctor makes sense as a protagonist for a type of game that's all about running away from the monsters rather than fighting them, and using more of your wits rather than the brawn to survive. And that's pretty much it. That's me done.
Okay, fight.
I take issue with Ben oversimplifying our pitches to Predator versus Alien. very like, come on, that's a low blow as
No,
well.
I said you both went for malleable concepts. I praise.
Yeah, but it's
nice.
just Doctor Who versus a monster. No, unfortunately,
No,
I'm
I said you both dodged that.
Ben's in my shit list, actually. The Alien franchise, you've got Aliens, and you could look at Aliens as a big action monster movie. In some ways, it is. In other ways, it's a really angry film about the military complex and capitalism in general. But I think we could get a lot of shared blood with Doctor Who in Aliens 3. Not only do we have a couple doctors who have already battled xenomorphs, Paul McGann, David Warner. Does that not sound like a pitch where you get this weighty, heavy story of a post-apocalyptic world that can explore themes such as motherhood, estrangement, perhaps not the rape bit, that's why we're staying away from the first one, but corporations have a good place in Doctor Who, so do Space Marines, and so does a post-apocalyptic world that the Doctor could fix. That's my pitch, anyway. Does it not just sound great for an alien film where Doctor Who is thrown at Weyland Yutari, the company itself? The alien world is too desolate for that. So a crossover wouldn't just be Alien versus Monster. It could be two franchises giving to one another. And I think, well, we've seen that Alien has so many references in the show that it clearly isn't, too graphic to talk about. If Capaldi can name drop and joke about an alien movie called Alien, it's going to be okay with kids. And a lot of 80s stories go a lot closer to that mark.
I guess when it comes to fun fan casts and fun crossovers, these conversations are fun and worth having. But I think when you talk about it logistically, when you have something like the Alien, which is a creature that has acid for blood, and also for Silent Hill, where one of the main antagonists of it is like basically sexy, busty nurses to represent James Sunderland's libido. This isn't stuff I think is very age appropriate for Doctor Who, the TV series proper. And I also think that Silent Hill is a franchise that has really seen significantly better days. I think you quoted a Zero Punctuation review, and to quote his review of Silent Hill Homecoming, the whole game is trying so hard to be part of the big boys club you can hear the disc straining with the effort. I think we don't want Doctor Who to be trying to lift up another franchise. We want them to be working in tandem with each other. And
he
also
googled that.
I
googled that, Your Honor.
I'll allow it.
I did remember, however, James Sunderland, which is like,
I mean,
that's ingrained.
To be fair, Doctor Who, even if we're not talking the main series, if we are just talking from the games front, I think it's kind of they're both on the same level. The only way to go is up. And
Doctor Who as a program has seen better days, so let's not.
Yeah, don't Will.
Why do you need Weyland Yutani when you have the Kablam Man?
Well, because that episode was Kablam. Well, come on. That's okay.
For Weyland Yutani, we have the Forge, we have the Division, we have so many shadowy organizations, and putting the Doctor, against like organizations like this, I kind of think Weyland Yutani doesn't fully work as a villain, because the more that we learn about them, the more convoluted it gets, and you can't really picture them just sort of functioning like a normal, horrible corporation that you just kind of imagine a bunch of men in suits chucking children onto piles of burning money. I mean, I know that is the world entirely. But
every single head or like head of the board we've seen is already a comical pantomime Doctor Who villain. I don't get this. There's Weyland Yutari merch. Like, that logo is iconic. How has a film franchise made a bad guy, boring company logo iconic and in the popular consciousness? Because they're not just a company. They are the corporate fucker company in all of fiction. I would love to see it dissembled, and I really do think the Eric Saywood era would be the perfect place to do it. If Resurrection of the Daleks can do it, expanded media would have been the perfect place and time to do this.
So can I argue that the time has passed? Whereas clearly Doctor Who's slumming it, Silent Hill's slumming it, we have Chris Chibnall, you have Blooper Team. Let's try and help each other.
Well, I'd actually argue that Davis's answer should be disqualifying because Alien Wayland Yutani is already in the Doctor Who universe.
No, we're not doing this again.
Tried
this last time.
Because in the episode, there's an episode of
isn't
Red
enough
Dwarf
line.
where there's a TARDIS in the background, so they take place in the same universe. And Wayland Yutani, they have a ship in Red Dwarf, meaning that they are already connected.
Gonna need more than that, buddy. I'm talking franchise.
You're going to argue with Red Dwarf?
I'm arguing with Red Dwarf. I'm arguing
Okay.
with canon as a concept.
Let's not criticize the Alien franchise on grounds that they just do a crossover with everyone. Let's not crossover slut shame a franchise. We're classier than this. This is battles in fandom.
My franchise has 6 digits. My one actually brings in more quarterly revenue than your franchise does. So
I'd actually argue
We're
maybe
arguing
not.
against corporations a second ago, and now you're going, look how much money we have.
Actually,
that's the magic of James Cameron, baby.
I'd actually be interested to crunch the numbers if Goosebumps or Aliens, which ones makes the more money.
Oh yeah,
Not that
you argued Goosebumps.
Yeah, I was going to say you two were just arguing amongst yourselves, whereas my idea was standing proud on top of the podium, because I think it's because it is so malleable that you'd be able, like, I guess it is a great perfect fit, even if you were to do a meta concept like the books come to life, or if you were to, you know, have something fun where just one of the villains is just in one of the Doctor Who episodes. The possibilities are endless. Whereas I think for something like Alien, basically the most horrifying thing about an Alien Doctor Who crossover will be the fandom reaction as to where in the timeline it fits. And I'm not ready for those discussions. I'm just not. I'm sorry.
Well, I kind of think Goosebumps. I mean, yeah, it's safe, it's possible, but like, I think arguing about like which one's the most logistically possible, I think that's kind of a. I mean, none of these are ever going to happen anyway. So, kind of arguing about logistics, it's kind of a moot point. And I don't think I'm quite getting a sense from you guys on how these two franchises meeting are gonna benefit each other. Whereas, what I said with Silent Hill and Doctor Who, Silent Hill benefits from a protagonist that could offer new story opportunities, and Silent Hill as a story, as a setting, is a unique foil for the Doctor.
Goosebumps specifically does feel very serialized, not throwaway per se. That's the kind of Doctor Who I actually do like, but I'm not seeing how a crossover is like the deal breaker. Also, you couldn't bring Are You Afraid of the Dark? Really?
My knowledge of Are You Afraid of the Dark does not span as far as Goosebumps, I'm afraid. That's a personal failing, and I don't want that to reflect my answer.
You will be deducted, hopefully. I got
But,
Hey, no, you're not the judge here. You don't make that.
I was a judge an hour ago.
That title has been taken away from you, and you know that.
This is an hour hence. We fucking time traveled.
I will say about the 3 choices that we've got here. Out of the 3, personally, I do think that Silent Hill is the scariest, but that is because the horror is so specific to the protagonist of said game. Like, you know, Pyramid Head is the embodiment of James Sunderland's insecurities and his libido, once again, with all the sexy nurses and everything. Whereas I think if you were to have that with, say, the Doctor, you would end up learning stuff about the character that maybe would box you into a corner, narratively speaking. I think once you have opened those corners, like stuff like the Dream Lord is super interesting. I love that, and I kind of want them to expand on it. But I also know that if they do, it may be a point of no return for the character. You know, some people were upset about the Timeless Child revelation, and I think we'd get something similar to that with a Silent Hill expose, because then we'd have more concrete answers to Doctor Who.
Silent Hill 4. The main protagonist doesn't have a twist like that, but it's still an interesting story. Dr. Dances could almost be a Silent Hill story because Jamie is kind of a walking symbolism for Nancy's psyche and everything she's going through, and that kind of guilt and that trauma. So it's, yeah.
What Ben's describing is a character piece metaphorical horror. which is a dime a dozen. It's not exactly a groundbreaking concept. I have to wonder if you're just taking the tone and the imagery of Silent Hill, aren't you cheapening it just a little bit? If it's not specific.
Silent
That
Hill
was rhetorical, but
like
feel
I said,
free.
Silent Hill is it was already a really malleable concept, and it has been the most justice when they haven't tried to recapture Silent Hill 2. So
It feels like just a high concept Doctor Who story.
it's about cold entrapments. Just because it's malleable doesn't mean it has no identity as a franchise. It's about a cold sense of entrapment, whether it's characters being stuck, in the past, being stuck in cycles, being stuck in town because they can't leave, or being stuck in this one apartment, or being stuck in basically a nightmare. Putting that with the Doctor, whose power is to leave any story, that's unique.
So we're not using specific imagery, whereas in terms of iconography, Alien universe is plentiful. Every single corridor, to the design of a ship, to the little alien face huggers, every single part of it is totally embedded in pop culture and instantly recognizable. I think we've also done a disservice, just larger world. It's not just one story you're telling with Alien. Prometheus is an actual retelling of Alien, but it's about completely different themes. It's about as high concept sci-fi as you can get, but compare it with Covenant. You can look at Alien 3, Resurrection if you wanted to, and that's not even going into the books. The books alone show there is so much more to this sad little world than just Ripley, a company, and some aliens. It is a demented fictional universe in need of saving.
I've kind of brought up reasons why Silent Hill, when paired with Doctor Who, might avoid its worst instincts, because they've got this kind of specific protagonist. I don't necessarily think there's going to be a guarantee with that if you're going to do a crossover with Doctor Who. I think we are just going to get, Alien, the aliens, a company of Marines, maybe Ripley or a Ripley-esque character. Because I think there's a danger with both of ours that, you might just borrow iconography and have it be a toy smash session. But I think I've at least given a reason why Silent Hill might have the good sense to avoid it when given this protagonist. I don't quite see that with Alien.
That's interesting, because I think I've described a Doctor Who story, and I've come at it from that angle first. So actually, it doesn't matter.
I think you've described a Doctor Who story, but it's also a Doctor Who story that I think with the Alien, it is an expansive and interesting world, but I do think that when you include, let's say, the Xenomorphs, there's only so many ways that a non-violent or supposed non-violent protagonist like the Doctor would be able to defeat them. I think we just end with...
That's why we have the androids, Will.
Yeah, but however, you want to make sure that you've got an alien crossover with the alien in it, don't you? Otherwise, that you're kind of losing the baseline appeal, or at least what the most recognizable aspect of it.
Yeah, we don't talk to Jaws either, but he's quite imposing, and it's quite a loaded film nonetheless, I'd say.
Yeah, but however, how you just basically end an Alien Doctor Who crossover by recreating the ending of the Saranga conundrum. You can't shoot it because the Doctor's not going to be shooting it. You're going to have to launch it off into space.
I knew the Bating rang a bell. No, I think
it's one of Wayland Yutani's creations.
I see. You're ripping from Alien 1, and I do think I've got a vision here. At the very least, it's been quite specific. Ben. So I do think. Also, may I just add into the Alien's got some video games. Some of them are quite good. Do you have a review? Do you have any reviews for them, Will? Any bad reviews for Alien Isolation?
I'm afraid.
Anything you want to plagiarize right now?
Oh, mine's a video game too. Yeah,
Don't make me bring up Aliens versus Colonial Marines. None of us want that. One of us will be red-faced and angry. The other one will be me.
Okay, well, my final defense is 10 Little Aliens, the book. I guess you should have read it for homework, I guess. No, and my major attack, my final attack is there's actually a BBC stipulation which states that good Doctor Who video games cannot be made. And so that's like this unfortunate obstacle we're going to have to work around there, Ben.
Are we really trusting the BBC?
I think we're going to have to go through them, bud. I think the proper channels are going to have to know
Okay.
about Silent Hill coming.
Made.
Not quite Fortnite.
I can see Will's about to try and say a final point. So Will, you can say
yeah,
yours, and then
Yeah, my wrap up is that I do love the Alien franchise and love the Silent Hill franchise, but I do, like I said, I think that there are some mature aspects and themes that are incompatible with Doctor Who. Torchwood, I think, would be a really great Alien story. Torchwood and Alien would be really cool. I think back to like the visceral scares and the frights I had in Prometheus, and that was when Noomi Rapace's character was having that C-section by machine. That's not something you're gonna get on BBC One at 7 o'clock alongside Strictly Come Dancing. Maybe once again the alternative universe where Rob Shearman writes the Quarks in 2005 instead of Dalek, but we don't live in that better reality. So for Alien, I just don't really know how you do that with Doctor Who without just recreating aspects of the Saranga conundrum, arguably better. But also for Silent Hill, it's just maybe like Amy's Choice. I think it'd be more interesting if you had a companion who was stuck in Silent Hill and maybe the Doctor is trying to guide them out of it or something. But then that's Amy's Choice. That's what's been done before. Whereas I think there are some concepts in Goosebumps, like Slappy the Puppet, that haven't even been touched on, or the meta aspects of literal books and storytellings as fear, as fuel, or something. I think there are possibilities here, and like I said, it's so malleable. And I think that the audience, the crossover in ages and demographics, not only makes it logistical, but I actually think it's something that we should do.
What if Doctor Who was more tacky?
Final
Yeah,
point.
I love
Ben, they both have final points. I think it's only fair that you have an uninterrupted one as well.
All right. So I think we have been trying to, in this discussion, find a sweet spot between malleable enough to fit with Doctor Who while still bringing the franchise's identity, bringing both franchises' identity to it, so it doesn't feel like this couldn't just be an original concept. With Aliens, again, I did say that I don't think the Alien franchise is going to resist its worst instincts when it comes to pairing that with Doctor Who. I think while it is a much more malleable concept and there are so many ideas worth exploring in that world, I don't think we are guaranteed to get them if we do get that crossover, because there's no incentive not to. And with Goosebumps, I think he's actually gone for too malleable, whereas I've said there is the specific thing that Silent Hill brings to Doctor Who is the sense of entrapment. It's the sense of being stuck, and it's a unique foil for the Doctor because the Doctor is always trying to escape. That is their power. The TARDIS is almost like a trapdoor. They escape from one story and they can always go into the next. Silent Hill is almost the anti-Doctor Who in that regard. So that's a fascinating pairing. You don't need to tell some kind of backstory. You don't need to come up with some kind of twist for the Doctor. You could explore an original character, you could explore a companion, but there could still be a focus on the Doctor being stuck in a story they can't escape from. It's certainly a very loaded, very dense, very adult franchise, but I think in video games, it's enough of a attachment that you could get away with it. We've already had pretty adult, pretty horrifying stuff. Sam mentioned 10 Little Aliens. That's under the BBC license. That was republished recently, so we're making allowances for that. And also, Silent Hill depends a lot on its symbolism. It does not need to say these things up front. So it can be kind of innocuous, and it can be quite subtle about some things. So, yeah, that's been done.
Okay, lovely. Really great round. Yeah. It's the old chestnut again. It's tough. It is tough.